all was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets and threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? They answered, yes. And he said to them, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out his treasure, what is new and what is old. The word of the Lord. A fellow that I co-teach with at the college is a former Hollywood writer and producer. And because he's a voting member of some of the awards that are given out each year, movie studios send him DVDs of their current releases. They're called screeners, because they want him to watch these movies and hopefully vote for them. They're called for your consideration. You know, they send him these movies. Well, last year, one of the big winners was this film, Everywhere, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which ended up winning the Oscar for Best Picture. Now, before the Academy Awards took place, I had heard a lot of buzz about the movie, so I wanted to see it, so I borrowed his screener. There have been several rave reviews about it from some critics who loved it and some who just hated it. Just watch it, I was told. Without ruining any of the plot, it's safe to say that the film lives up to its title. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's an all-out, no-holds-barred onslaught of visual, mental, and emotional stimulation. As we would have said back in the 70s, that movie's a trip. I would best describe it as part comedy, part drama, part action movie, part sci-fi, and part something that has yet to be defined. After that sensory overload, I asked myself, what just happened? Did I understand all that I had seen? All that I had experienced? All that I felt? Did I get it? Did I understand this movie? To be honest, no, absolutely not. And that's exactly what I wish the disciples would have admitted in our passage today. I wish that they would have said that none of what Jesus said in these parables ever makes sense. After taking the disciples through this onslaught of parables in this passage from Matthew about the kingdom of heaven, without one being explained, surely at least some of the disciples must have felt clueless. Mustard seeds and bread starter, treasure hidden in a field, and pearls, nets thrown into the sea, fish separated into baskets. Have you understood all this? Jesus asks. So I really want the disciples to look at Jesus and say, no, Jesus, we don't really get it. You're going to have to tell us more. But they respond, yes. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm sure somebody in that group was fibbing. Of course, when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, we know what the kingdom of heaven is not like. That's a lot easier. The kingdom of heaven is not like the yard sale that families have after parents pass away. A sale where stuff accumulated for more than 50 years makes its way to a concrete driveway, where eager people show up at 7 a.m. to look at the crystal glassware that mom loved, but she never drank out of. or the silver serving pieces that never made it to a dinner table but sat safely in a cabinet. The kingdom of heaven is not a lifetime devoted to accumulating stuff. The kingdom of heaven is not like sea life that's struggling with rising water temperatures and microplastics, or children who fear for their safety at school. The kingdom of heaven is not like, well, you fill in the blank. I'm sure we all know what the kingdom of heaven is not like: selfishness, violence, destruction, fear. If Jesus wants us to actually live the kingdom of heaven, then shouldn't he make it more clear to us what we're supposed to be doing? What we want is for Jesus to explain these parables to us. Now, many scholars have examined all these parables, and they've been interpreted in many ways. But if it's not clear to the best and the brightest minds out there, well, what chance do we have? So tell us, Jesus, what you mean. Explain it. Then we can form a committee. If you tell us what we mean, we can write it into our bylaws. If you can clarify these, Jesus, that maybe we'll know how to lobby our politicians. If you enlighten us, Jesus, then we wouldn't feel so clueless as we try to pursue this kingdom of heaven business. It would sure be nice to come to the end of the passage and to be like the disciples and say, yes, we understand. It's frustrating not to have answers. Most days we'd rather have clear-cut explanations, I think. I know I do. We want to know exactly how to behave and exactly what to do and when to do it and why we're doing it. We're practical people. We just want some details. We want explanations about how to do church and how to be faithful people. We want a concrete plan. We want roadmaps to the kingdom of heaven. There's no shortage of people who say they have all the answers, who are more than ready to tell us what we're doing wrong, and who are sure and certain that they know the shape of the kingdom of heaven, who's in, who's out, and what it all means. But I wonder if in our desire for clarity, for certainty, for explanations, for answers, that we make the kingdom of heaven less than what Jesus intended. If we've settled for a vision of the kingdom of heaven that's maybe too small. If we will let our quest for explanation and clarity get the best of us, we can miss a larger point. If our desire to figure out the parables, to be able to explain the kingdom of heaven in full detail, then we settle for less than the kingdom of heaven. While we want the blueprint for the kingdom of heaven, the handbook, the owner's manual, the computer code, the line item budget, all Jesus seems to want to do is to spark our imaginations, to draw us into his curiosity, and to invite us to wonder. Not explanations and to-do lists and rules and action plans. He gave us little stories about seeds and dough and treasures and merchants and nets. When my daughter was young, we'd always look for ways to pass our time on trips down to Disney. That 2-hour drive down there. So we started playing a game. One of us would say, "Once upon a time." And then she'd begin to make up a story on the spot. After about a minute, She would stop, and I would pick up where she left off. And the story would have some wild twists and turns with a million holes in the plot. Now, why exactly did that princess sprout wings? Neither of us knew where the story was going or what it meant. But that wasn't the point. It was about creating a different world than the one we were in at the moment. It was about cultivating her imagination and curiosity and creating a new world together. I think that's what Jesus is up to in telling these stories. Sure, he wants to tell us something, but having all the answers would mean that we would then make all the decisions, carry out the plan, write the policies, follow them to a T. Explanations and certainty would mean that we are in control and that we really wouldn't need God for this kingdom of heaven stuff. But when we put away our need for explanation and certainty, and when we stop trying to have all the answers, we open ourselves up to imagination, to wonder, to creativity that lives at the heart of the kingdom of God. That's when we make room for God to work through us. In these unresolved and unexplained short stories, that Jesus shows us something about the place of wonder and imagination in the kingdom of heaven, about curiosity, about creativity. And as far as I can tell from these parables of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is for dreamers, for visionaries, for people willing to find a new story. It's for people who catch a glimpse of what the world can be when God is at work. It's for people who have not limited the possibilities of what God is doing, how God is doing it, and who God can use along the way. It's for people who can spot God at work in the most ordinary of things and begin to wonder what God might be up to. It's for people who don't have their faith all figured out and who aren't afraid to admit that they don't have all the answers. It's for those of us who come to faith with openness, ready to be surprised by God's work behind the scenes and who he uses even as small parts as he transforms the world. It's for people who believe deep down that God is at work redeeming, renewing, and restoring the world, and who trust that God invites us to join in that work, even when we can't explain it. Have you understood all this? Jesus asked. No, to be honest, we haven't. And I hope never will. In the name of the Father,